Alright everyone, welcome back. So we're going to start off building this track by working with a melodic pad kind of sound and really building out some nice textures and melodic elements that we can work with. So what I really wanted to do for this song was explore textures and resampling. I found a new way of kind of approaching audio, which I'll show through this pad sound that I'm about to make. And I really wanted to show what happens when pitch shifting and resampling is overused and you're kind of intentionally creating audio artifacts and things like that. So first, let's go ahead and set our project's BPM to 100. And usually I like to work with 100 BPM because it's slow enough that you can really work with a lot of downtempo styles of music, but it's also not too slow that you can't make nice rhythmic drum patterns. So I usually like to start my projects off with the nice ambience. It kind of sets the stage for how the whole song is going to sound. It really gives you and gives the project a sense of space. For me, this kind of helps inform the rest of the production. If I go in and just start with chords or drums or something like that, I usually find that I kind of recreate the same thing over and over. But whenever I start with kind of an interesting texture, it enables me to kind of go in and find more interesting patterns and things that I might not have tried if I went just straight for melodies or straight for drums. So for most of the videos in this course, we're going to start completely from scratch. But with this specific sound, I wanted to show you what the end result would sound like because this patch is going to get a little bit complicated and kind of do some weird resampling. And so this kind of just gives you a little bit of a roadmap to where we're going so you can know what the end result is going to sound like. So this is what we'll be starting with, just some simple piano chords. And I'll go ahead and play those back. So just some really simple soft piano chords. And then we're going to be resampling that and turning it into this pad sound. All right, so for now we can go ahead and delete those because we'll be recreating it from scratch. But that just kind of gives you a nice idea of what we're actually going to be doing. So let's first start off with that piano. I have a combinator patch that I like to work with, which is just a really simple soft piano sound that sounds like this. And this isn't anything too crazy, it's just a radical piano here in Reason. The main characteristics of it is that I take it all the way down to this subdued mode, which makes it sound really nice and soft. So this would be without that. So it's much softer and more round. And then I go in and I take the mechanics section of the piano and just crank that all the way up. So you can hear all the key sounds. And whenever I lift up off the keyboard, you can kind of hear all the mechanics behind the piano. And then I have some equalization, a little bit of compression just with this piano. Then I run it through an Audiomatic, which is just kind of a hi-fi stereo sound. And then just a little bit of reverb with the soft tube reverb. So the main thinking behind this specific piano patch is I just kind of wanted to recreate that almost like Olafur Arnalds style piano that's very subdued, very soft. It almost sounds like a felt grand piano or something like that. And I usually find pianos are always a great starting point when I don't know what I want to write because you can write lead sounds, you can write melodies, bass lines, chords, really anything on the piano. So I find that's always a good way to start. So let's go ahead and put in some chords that we'll be working with. Let's just make a simple 4-bar pattern. Open up the sequencer section. Turn the snap to bar here. Now let's start off with just some simple octaves. And so we'll do, let's do 2 F notes here. We'll go up to this E note, and then we'll move up to this A note as well. So let's just extend those out. And then we're going to take the volume down of that section as well, so it's a little bit softer and more subdued. Maybe turn that up to about 38. It's kind of sounding nice and a little bit ambient as well. So next what I want to do is go in and kind of almost create like a piano roll style sound, give it a little bit more interest. And what I mean by that is just this sound right here. So kind of roll into that chord rather than just playing it all at once. And that's really simple, so we can just go ahead, select all those notes, pull it over. And just kind of keep going in and just moving that. And I've turned my snap off as well whenever I'm doing this. That sounds like this. Just gives it a little bit more interest. And then let's go ahead and also turn up the volume of this patch as well. And then actually, before I go ahead and resample this out into one note that we'll be plugging into a sampler, I want to do a few mixdown changes real quick. Let's just cut out some of that bass. Something like just right up to that note right there. So that'd be 159. And the reason why I'm doing that is because with all the resampling that we're going to be doing, you don't have the opportunity to go back and kind of mix each individual part after you bounce things to audio. So for me, the sound design and mixing process is kind of all intertwined whenever I'm making these kind of vast resampled pad sounds. Because if you have a sound that's kind of mixed improperly and you start resampling it out and layering it with a bunch of things, it could just start to sound a little bit too crazy. So now that we have that equalization curve in, let's go ahead, just set our loop indicators. Go up to bounce mixer channels. We'll just bounce the master section to a new track of the song. And now we have our piano chord. All right, so for now I can just minimize that soft piano. And then what I'm going to do now is right click on this and select bounce to new sample. And this will enable us to put this sample into one of Reason's samplers. So let's go ahead and delete that track for now. And then we can move into Reason's rack, create a new combinator. And I'm going to create a line mixer 6.2. And then a NNXT advanced sampler. Let's see, where does it go? I feel like it's always moving. There we go. So now I'm going to right click on the device and reset it. So now we have an initialized patch that we can work with. And then just right click in this section, hit add zone. Or actually we just drag and drop our sample. That'd be much easier. Let's see. Oh yeah, of course. I always do this. Make sure to hit this sample browse button. And take our piano chord and just drag and drop that in. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is hit edit sample. And this is why I went in and bounced out this audio samples, because we're going to be taking this piano stab and kind of making it into more of like a textured pad sound. So go ahead and select the loop mode here. Bring in the left and right loop indicators. And we can actually zoom into that sample quite a bit as well. And what I'm doing here is just taking a loop of this sound. I'm going to move these indicators around until it kind of removes that popping sound. And actually, let's do this forward-backwards loop mode. There we go, and then you can hit save. Now whenever I press a key on my keyboard, it sounds like this. And that's a bit quiet, so we can go ahead and turn up that volume a little bit too. So what this is doing is taking that piano chord and turning it into an elongated pad sound. So this gives us really nice crossover between something that's kind of more organic and natural, like an acoustic piano, but then also something a bit more synthetic, which is done with this resampling. So it kind of almost makes it sound like a synthesizer. So there's a few more things that we can do as well. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of a pitch transient to the beginning of the sound. So let's see, turn up the pitch control just slightly to about there is fine. And then let's take this modulation envelope, bring that decay down. And that just adds a little bit of a attack transient to things. So if I turn that pitch all the way up, it sounds like this. And it almost creates that kind of laser effect. And I'll go in and actually bump up that release just slightly. And then next, let's go ahead and add a few effects devices onto our sound. The first of which is just going to be one of Reason's stock devices, is what I want to add in. Let's do the digital vocoder. Change that to equalizer mode. And just crank the shift knob all the way up. And that sounds like this. Oh, and don't forget to turn it to equalization mode. That adds just a really nice crispiness to the sound. And then next, what I want to do is go in and add a little bit of a saturation effect. So let's go to soft tube devices, soft tube saturation knob, turn it to the keep high mode so it keeps all those high frequencies intact. But then we'll just saturate our sound slightly. So this is actually a really great free plugin to kind of give analog saturation that I use quite often on my songs, as you'll see. And then next, let's just go ahead and add in a little bit of an equalization effect. Just go back to soft tube, go to this equalizer right here. And actually, we can go ahead and just take that bass down slightly, but we'll just leave it on that preset. Kind of just cleans things up a little bit. And then the final thing that I want to do is use the soft tube FET compressor as a distortion unit. And this is something that I figured out quite a while ago while I was just kind of messing around with it. So because this compressor model is an analog unit, you can overdrive the input gain and the output gain on the compressor to actually saturate and kind of hard clip your sounds. And as you can see actually from some of these presets, you have distortion 1 and 2. So this is something that you can actually do with this compressor. So what I do is I just drive the input gain, turn the ratio 1 to 1, so it's not really compressing anything, turn the attack and release all the way up, and then just crank the output gain. And right now this is going to be really, really loud, so I'm not actually going to play anything yet. I'm just going to create a line mixer. And then we'll just use that to turn everything down so we don't blow out our speakers here. And then that sounds like this. So you can hear that little crunch and overdrive because it's basically soft clipping our whole sound. And then the final thing that I want to do to this sound is just go in and add a little bit of equalization. So let's go ahead and cut out some of those bass frequencies. And then we'll kind of just use this high shelf to boost some of those highs. And then we'll cut out those very high frequencies because in my tracks I found that these high frequencies tend to build up quite a bit, especially once you start resampling things out. I'm actually going to turn down the master input here and crank this a little bit more. So I don't want too much of that distortion. So now we can move into the sequencer and start programming some notes. So let's go ahead and just draw in a D note in the second octave. So let's move down to octave 2. Just make that a few bars long. And the reason I wanted to choose this note is because it's a lower version of our first note. So our first note was right here. And then I drop that octave. And then I just drop that note down. So for this sound, I wanted to drop the note down so that you could really hear kind of the textures and artifacts that are created whenever you're resampling that audio. All right, so that's the first part of this melodic pad sound. In the next part, we're going to be kind of layering some textures on top of that sound in order to create a little bit more interest to the sound. And then we'll be resampling it out again, so we just have one really simple sampler patch that we can work with in our actual project.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting, and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.